Are we ready?
Yes. Leah, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Leah Terranova. I'm the Assistant Dean for Academic and Student Affairs. Welcome, all of you. Blake.
Hi, Leah.
Over to you.
Over to me. Blake, over to you. Yeah, I'm Blake Wilson. I'm Assistant Director of the Wheat Law Library, also a faculty advisor for the Mindfulness and Law Society. So yeah, I'm kind of here to answer questions on, I guess, the wellness end of things and trying, what can you do to maintain some type of work-life balance while in law school and beyond, because what you learn here you'll take with you. So if you want to not be so stressed out in your career, now is a really good time to start building up those habits. Cool. And Harrison, over to you.
There we go. I'm Harrison. I'm a 3L. I am the president of the Mindfulness Club, the Mindfulness and Law Society at KU. So I can speak to that. I can also speak to best practices from a student perspective. So things that have gotten me along and through my law school journey. And it's going to be a great conversation. Here we go.
All right. Hi. And if you haven't figured out who I am by now, because I bother you all enough through Facebook and email, I am Brianna Honchu. I am the Director of Recruiting and Pre-Law Program at KU. So if you have any questions whatsoever, you all should have my email. So go ahead and reach out. So we have 4 main topics that we've come up with that we can chat about. And then I do have some questions from students. And then if anyone wants to chime in and ask any questions, you can either ask in the group chat if you're more comfortable doing that. There's a chat option in Zoom, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. So the 4 main topics that we had prepared to talk about are first, how to maximize your law school experience. Second, taking breaks from study. Third, KU support that KU provides at the law school, and then mindfulness at KU Law. So first off, and feel free to, if you want to go in an order, you can do that. Sometimes that works better for Zoom calls. So if someone wants to go first on these, but how do students maximize their law school experience at KU Law? What are some things, maybe we should start with Harrison, since you're currently a student, that you can recommend for maximizing your law school experience?
Sure. So law school is a wonderful time and place. You're going to be exposed to a whole host of new ideas and opportunities. I would say take advantage of everything that the university and that the law school has to offer. This will be different for individual students. This could be joining one of the publications. We have 2 at the University of Kansas. This is kind of like the law review, where you can delve into the scholarly aspects of law and legal application. If you are interested in honing your oral advocacy skills, I would encourage you to take advantage of one of our moot court programs with expert faculty. And if you're interested in, just working and doing some research and working with faculty members who are experts in their fields, I would encourage you to apply for an RA, a research assistantship position. Faculty are more than willing to help out, to work with you. And I think, when you do those out of classroom activities, build and develop your legal lawyerly toolkits in a way that will serve you well, not only when you get into practice, but also as you matriculate through the curriculum and you finish your doctrinal courses after that first year.
Can I just jump right in? Is that
yes,
how we're doing?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna jump right in. I just want to build upon what Harrison said. I think, without calling you out, Harrison, and embarrassing you, I think you've been particularly good at finding your relevance in law school, right? So what that means is that for each of you, you're going to have a unique path. You come in with a different set of interests and skills, different personalities, different experiences from your background, and all of those things should play some kind of a role in your experience and your persona here in law school. So finding out how you can connect with people who are relevant to you and who share some of your same interests or can be great mentors for you will be really important in your success. And like Harrison said, that's going to be really different for each of you depending on where you want to go with your life and what you want to do with your career. If you're anything like me, you don't have that much of an idea of what you want to do when you enter law school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And trust me, it changed a lot throughout my 3 years there. And then in my, 25 years since graduating, it has continued to evolve. So that's okay to not know exactly what you want to do. You can still figure out how to be relevant and how to really build relationships up with both your peers, your faculty, alumni mentors who are there to help guide you and help you develop your professional persona. So I would just really echo what Harrison said. And then the only thing I would add to that, not the only thing, but one of the main things is, law school is, I feel like it comes with a big reputation, right? And people come in feeling like, oh my God, it's going to be cutthroat and so hard. And yeah, it's challenging. It is. But I think the biggest or best way to handle that challenge is to identify as early on as possible what your individual values are. And I think a lot of people, certainly young people, but also older people, don't spend a lot of time identifying what their individual values are. And that will really help you differentiate yourself in law school. It'll help you separate the sort of ambient stress that everyone's talking about and churning about from your own stress and what is stressful to you because it aligns with your values, right? And it means something to you. And it's really important to just not do the herd think or drink all the Kool-Aid that everyone else is drinking, and to kind of figure out for yourself what's important to you, why it's important, and the best route to get to where you want to go. And again, that's going to be really individualized. So luckily for you, there's lots of different personalities and different strengths in the law school from faculty and administrators and directors such as Bree, who can really help guide you along your way, as well as great mentorship from upper level students such as Harrison.
And I have a question specifically for you, Harrison. I've heard a lot of students, and back in my time at law school, there's kind of two groups of how you study and maximize your time. There's students that kind of treat law school like a job, like an 8 to 5. And then there's students like me who were kind of all over the place at random times, because that's just kind of how I'm more of a creative personality. So I would like to study at midnight, which looking back, cannot believe I was up that late. But what kind of works for you? And do you have any experiences in your class that you've seen either way working better for someone, or would you recommend trying both ways, or how did you figure out how to study?
So Bree, I think I definitely fell into your camp at the beginning of my law school experience, and it's like, you have all the, obviously, and I think you said that everyone here has been accepted. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Okay. So by virtue of the fact that everyone's on this call, I mean, you all have developed, wonderful extracurricular hobbies, your portfolios are excellent. And, if you're anything like me, you wanted to maintain all of those things when you got into law school, and, go to the games and, go to the bars. And I think that there is definitely room for that. I will say, I have found personally, if you treat law school as a job, you're going to be more efficient with your time, and you will have more time in the long run for some of those extracurricular outlets. So if anyone's interested in a book, there's a guy, he's a computer scientist, Cal Newport, and he writes a bunch of books like how to maximize your time. And I just got finished with one of his books. The title, I think it was Deep Work or Deep Thought. he talks about, when you're going into a knowledge-based profession, a knowledge-based working profession, so an accountant, a professor, a lawyer, you will find that there is more free time and unstructured time for you to pursue your interests, which is both a blessing and a curse, right? And I think that one of the things that took me a little while to figure out when I came into law school was some classes, the only thing that you actually have to do in terms of like the physical work product you have to turn in is the final exam. And it's like, well, what do I do, the rest of the time? It's like people tell me I'm supposed to be busy and everything else. It's learning how to structure your time in a way that maximizes the end result. So yeah, for me, I've developed over the course of law school a pretty strict routine that I follow. And, I wake up pretty early. I am not a night person. And Bree, I was always impressed, that the people whose best working hours were between, midnight and like 3 a.m. That is not me. Like I have to be in bed by like 9:30, but then I get up early, I try to get some writing done in the morning and, just maintain. And quite frankly, I think it's, we're probably getting better at that and getting practice at that now in this global pandemic. It's like, how do you structure your time when there is so much unstructured time? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the law school process. I don't know if that answered the question.
I think it did. It did. Basically, you just have to figure out what works best for you as a person. And I think that most of the students that I have talked to do find that treating it like a job where you go in, you study, you dedicate a certain amount of hours to law school, and then you try to turn it off at night, especially those who have a family that they live with. I think that helps a lot. If you have children or you live with a spouse or a partner or even roommates that you want to dedicate time to, treating and setting aside hours to study may be better than the option that I kept pursuing. Which, looking back, I probably should have had more structure in place, but it's something that you just have to play around with. So,
Bree, I would also add to that, like play around with different study habits, right? So like I never studied with friends or in group settings until I got to law school. And the first year of law school, I didn't do that. I continued to just do what I had done in undergrad. And I think I didn't perform as well because of it, because the second and third year I chose to study with study groups. And it was just so helpful to talk through legal concepts and talk through fact patterns and learn from my peers and see how to best articulate something that would really kind of mimic how you would want to articulate that in an exam. That was extremely helpful to me. And it's not what I naturally would have chosen to do, but ultimately it was really the best way for me to learn the material, because the material is really different than what you're learning in undergrad. And it takes a different way of analyzing it, thinking about it, processing it, that is just, and I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest part of law school and why they struggle so much transitioning to law school, because it forces you to think differently. And so doing that with other people can be helpful.
Right. And I think just also trying out, not only if you do it separately on your own or with groups, but also different ways of studying. Flashcards never worked for me. Writing it down over and over and over again on a dry erase board that I carried around in my backpack, that worked wonders. So just play around and don't get stuck and settled on one certain way, because you will learn over time that what worked for you in undergrad might not work for you in law school. So, yeah. What else did we have? Okay, so we kind of talked about this, but taking breaks from study. I know that one of the great things about KU, and my experience with KU, is the amount of student groups that we have, the amount of events. And we've already talked about planning, so you can attend some of those, but could you all talk about some of the different student groups that are available and events that will help maximize everyone's law school experience at KU.
Like,
Who wants to go first?
Yeah. Okay. No. So something that I do stress as a law school student is kind of finding your niche, and sometimes that is with groups. And we've got so many students. I don't know that I can list all the student groups. There's the HALSA, NALSA, the Black Law Student Association, the Women in Law Association. So, I mean, there are so many student groups, and they will introduce themselves. And so it's always it was my experience to be honest, I went, when I was in law school, I went to, at the beginning, like to every single group's little intro section that they have, and finally settled in with the groups that I really that really struck a chord with me. And so so finding a place within a group is a great idea. It's a good way to find study partners. It's also a good way to connect with upperclassmen. So as a first-year student, you tend to walk in and they automatically put you into your Hogwarts house, and then you're kind of stuck being I was a Hufflepuff. So all you see and all you're with are other Hufflepuffs. So joining a student organization is a great way to find out that, the Slytherin aren't so bad. They may have some study habits, or even if it's a 1L in a different group, you can always study with them. They can also be a really good source for study materials, or if you find somebody who had the same faculty member in a certain class as you had, they may be able to give you some tips and tricks. Whether you should sit in the front of the class to avoid the lightning strike, or sit in the back, or there's no way to avoid it. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend being social. And, again, we're going with scheduling time. And so I would definitely carve out a section of time to be social. Definitely with family. So you want to carve out time for that. You want to carve out time for yourself, and then you also want to carve out time for law school activities. And so there's a lot of balancing that can be done there, that needs to be done. And a lot of it is just figuring it out. And some people figure it out faster than others, but it's no big deal. Like I said, you've got a lot of resources and a lot of people. We've all been to law school. We've all been through it. And each one of us had, I'm going to assume, a completely different experience. So it's always not only good to find a mentor or one person to talk to, especially someone who's been through it, but quite a few, several. I went into law school thinking that I kind of need to become like a lawyer, and it just turned out to be false, and a mistake on my part. We, as a law school and as a profession, we want you. We don't want like just a photocopy of every other attorney that has ever existed. Like, we want you. We want individuals. We want people who just are themselves. And so while during all of this, when you're looking at different groups, you're also in a strange way kind of discovering who you are, especially your niche within the law school community and the law community. And all of those groups can help you with that, give you a lot of perspective. Going to law school, I guess it depends on your undergrad. For me, I was a philosophy major. I studied philosophy and Mandarin Chinese. And so going to law school was like nothing else. Like, I'd never experienced anything like that. And so it was a hard reset for me, and which is fine. I figured it out, obviously, made it through. For some people, it'll be a hard reset. Some people it won't. So finding a niche and finding a group will definitely help you work through it. So yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. I highly recommend the Mindfulness and Law Society because just because
An
I'm here.
plug.
And yeah. Just a plug.
Yeah, I would say that, finding your people in law school is really important. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. Get involved with the student organizations. You'll find mentorship. You'll find people who might have similar backgrounds or interests than you. I'm the faculty advisor for our first generation professionals student group, as well as our Outlaws and Allies LGBTQ group. And we host socials. If you're in either one of those groups, you'll end up at my house at some point in time, having a barbecue or a picnic or something. So it's a really nice way to get to know other students as well as the faculty sponsors. I know in some student groups as well, we do mentoring programs where we'll set you up with an alumni. So that can be really helpful as well. For first generation professionals, to have an alumni who is also an FGP is just like such a great source of advice and support for you as you're moving through law school. So we do try and find ways to really practically help our students in student organizations. And the other thing I would say is, like, if you're like any other law student that I've ever met, once you get to law school, it will just like consume your life. It will be all you want to talk about, or all you're able to talk about. And that's really annoying for people that are not in law school. So if you have loved ones who are not going to be going to law school, such as family or friends or significant others, be mindful of the fact that they should continue to serve as like an oasis for you, where you don't have to talk about law school and you do get to focus on your relationships and your interests outside and apart from law school. Cherish those because they're really key in striking that balance for you and giving you a really healthy attitude about law school. I think it's a little bit of I describe it as like a snow globe. When you're in it, it's hard to realize that maybe it's not entire reality. And when things get shaken up and it feels like it's snowing, and everything is kind of stressing you out, it's really, really healthy to take a step outside of the snow globe and gain some perspective around what you're doing, how you're spending your time, and how that defines you as a person. So having family and friends close at hand, even if they're physically far apart, can be really, really helpful. So I would, invite you to really build that balance in your life. It's very healthy.
I would add something. I would build on two things that both Dean Terranova and Professor Wilson brought up. I think the Dean talked about law school being all-consuming, and Professor Wilson talked about like a hard reset. That might seem a little bit odd to you, at least it did to me coming into law school. It's like, you mean, this isn't going to be this great community of knowledge like undergrad was. It's not to say that it will not be that experience. And I want to make something clear that it took me a little while to figure out. I think when we talk about these new opportunities and these new experiences, which are great and which you should definitely take advantage of, with those opportunities and experiences come certain stressors, right? So like, for instance, you're going to be introduced, and I don't know how much you've been exposed to this already, but you're going to be introduced to a new method of didactics, right? The Socratic method. And if you were anything like me, I stressed out way too much about being called on in class. It's like the Socratic method is fine. Like, read the case. You don't need to brief. Well, I didn't need to brief every case. You will be fine. But that's a stressor. Another stressor is the new taxonomy for grading that you're going to be introduced to if you haven't experienced it already. And that is the Gaussian curve, right? So being graded on a curve such that it's a little bit more competitive who gets A's and who doesn't get A's, right? That's not to say that law school can't be a wonderful place, right? I think the people who do well develop toolkits to mitigate some of those stressors. It's like, in terms of well-being or wellness, we talk about 6 dimensions, all of which I can't remember right now, but it's like spiritual, physical, emotional, community. The dean and the professor have touched on all of those, and if you are able to find ways to cultivate those aspects of your life as a law student, I think at that point, the grades will come and everything will work out.
Right. And speaking of getting called on, there is going to be a time, at least one time, if not maybe five, that you are called on, or 20, depending on, life, where you are called on and you don't have the answer. And that's fine. The whole point of being called on is not to terrify you, and is not to make you feel bad, and is not to put you down and test your knowledge. Really, getting called on most of the time is for a variety of reasons, one of which is it's a little bit of a break for the professor, so they can like check and see where they are time wise. Are we on track to finish this class in time? Another is just to create a little bit more conversation, so you're not getting talked at for 55 minutes by one person. So getting called on is not, it's not meant to terrify you. Most classes, they will have some sort of like attendance participation aspect of it that you need to fulfill, but it's not going to be, you're not going to get dinged if you did read the case, but you didn't gather that one nugget that's really important. No one's going to make fun of you, or it's a very collective and positive environment, really. So if you get called on, like I've gotten called on before, and I just felt so dumb afterwards. And then I realized that the point isn't about me feeling dumb. The point is to have everyone else learn. And I realized I was missing the major point of that case because I didn't catch it the first time. And it's supposed to be a positive learning environment. It will happen to you and it will be fine, and you will never remember it 5 years down the road. It will be gone.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about that. It just reminds me of like the Zen Koan practice, where you just ask these questions that may or may not be impossible to answer. The point isn't to get the answer correct. Yeah, exactly. The point isn't to get the answer correct, because I'll tell you what happens is you get the answer correct, the faculty member will then change the parameters so that you're wrong. And so what they're doing is engaging in conversation, and then they're kind of checking your mind. But when I say checking your mind, I mean the classroom's mind, and kind of seeing where are you with these concepts and what can they say and do to help you grasp those concepts. So the cold call, the Socratic method, may seem scary, but you're just one end of a conversation that is going to end up being useful to everybody in the room. It is unfortunate if you don't know, if you're like, I'm sorry, I did not prepare, I don't know. That's actually an okay answer, because you are engaging in that conversation and they can move on. But if you didn't read and you try and wing it, I just don't recommend that. I recommend reading, and then just using that as the opportunity to check your mind and see whether or not you're grasping it. And if you're not, you're probably not grasping it. That's why you're in law school. It's not like, here's a bunch of cases, read it, now you understand law. The conversation is super important. So yeah, I wouldn't, you are going to stress about getting called on. Don't. But what can you say? You're going to stress, but it's not something necessary.
Professor Wilson, if I can build on that, I think the other thing is that they're not calling on, it's not like they're calling on you looking for one correct answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the whole premise of the Socratic method, is you're trying to, arrive at a fuller and more holistic notion of truth, whatever, with a capital T, and they do that by picking up on threads that maybe, a concurrence introduces that you didn't pick up on when you read the case. So it's really just about critical thinking. There are no right or wrong answers when you're being called.
Yeah, and if you have had a bad night, or something came up, or you just know that you're not prepared. I don't remember why, but I remember I was not ready for Dean Maz's tax class. There was something that happened, and I just emailed him and I was like, hey, if you call me today, I am not going to be prepared, and I'm just trying to make it through this class mentally. And he was totally understanding. And that's the key. If there is something tragic that has happened, just reach out to your professors. They are so understanding and kind. And they understand being a law student because they all were one back in the day. So reach out and just tell them, I need a day. And they might call on you the next day, but they won't press you on a day where you're having a very bad mental health day. If that makes sense.
Bree, you bring up a really good point that extends to beyond just sort of not being prepared for class. And that is that, you know, what we're trying to do in law school is not only teach you the substantive parts of law, because honestly, much of that you'll actually learn on the job. We're really trying to build you into professionals. And a big part of being a professional is communicating well. That is, in truth, one of a lawyer's best qualities, and should be one of their strongest attributes, is their communication skills. So, you know, in this, this opportunity, this experience we've had with COVID-19 has really been not only a test of everyone's communication skills, but also a testament, because people are going through a lot right now outside of class. Both faculty and students are juggling a lot of life right now, and making sure that students communicate effectively to their faculty when, you know, they have a sick kid at home right now, or they have another obligation that they have to manage in addition to managing law school. Faculty respond so well to that. Life happens, not just when you're a law student, but also when you're out as a practicing lawyer. And it's really about needing to learn how to communicate effectively what you need. And you know, you can't use your get out of jail free card too many times. You have to be responsible, but there's an extraordinary amount of compassion from faculty at KU Law, and they understand that students are juggling life in addition to law school.